In my last video, I showed you how to go and farm lemons because the lemon prices have been quite good over on Marama as well as on my EU account. But today I'm going to be going over a different way to make your money, and that is through crafting. And more specifically, today I'm going to show you how you can look on your specific server, see what's selling, see what's not, and get a good idea of what you need to craft in order to make that gold. All right, so we are over here in Brimstone. We're going to head over to the trading post. And the first thing you're going to want to do on your server is figure out what is the cheapest amongst the prismatic ingots, leather, and cloth. Over here on Marama right now during recording, prismatic cloth is actually the least expensive of the three. And what that essentially tells me is that I can invest in that resource and not have to spend quite as much per craft. So from there, being that cloth is the cheapest, we are going to focus on crafting light armor. Light armor has, the highest resource is going to be cloth, and since we can get that the cheapest, it just makes sense. Now, what I am going to recommend as far as what to craft is going to be footwear, gloves, or headwear. Gloves, I believe, are the absolute cheapest, and then footwear and headwear are going to be the same cost, but then once you get into the legs and the chest wear, no matter which equip load, it is going to be quite a bit more expensive just because of the resource cost that goes into it. So for today, we're going to look at the headwear and see what we got. And what you can see is quite a few crafted, a few, random pulls, which those people I'm sure were very happy to be pulling those. But what you are going to want to do, and this goes for armor, weapons, and jewelry, is you are going to want to look at each of these kind of higher priced items and see if there's any trends amongst them, because you are going to notice, like with this one, we've got enchanted ward, enchanted ward, enchanted ward, elemental aversion. This one also had health, enchanted ward, health, elemental aversion, shirking heals health, elemental aversion health. So you're seeing this trend now. We're seeing health, elemental aversion, shirking heals a little bit. You're going to see some conditionings and stuff like that. And the enchanted ward is definitely one that's very popular. But then what you want to do is figure out which of these perks are, actually affordable for you to craft, because like to buy the enchanted ward, hardened crystal is going to cost you quite a bit. If you pull them, great. You could then go and craft them. But honestly, it can be kind of tricky to craft certain perks on some of these items, especially if you're trying to craft multiples at a time. So what I would highly recommend is finding something, maybe something like this. So what we have is a health elemental version shirking heals. If you're PvPing and actually getting your PvP track, you are then able to get shirking heals and some of the other PvP type of perks because you can get the craft mod packs and stuff like that from there. And what you would want to do is craft elemental aversion with shirking heals and hope for health. The main reason being, what I'm going to do here is actually pull up the New World database right over here. And with the New World database, you have the Spinweave Helm that I already pulled up. And when you go to whatever you're trying to craft, whether it's the helmet, gloves, boots, it's kind of the same deal. You're going to see right here with the various perks. We'll click on the random perk. And this is essentially just going to show us the percentage chance of that particular perk dropping. So like I said before, we need to have the PvP perk crafted on. The PvP perks cannot be randomly dropped unless it's the critical retribution like this here. But as you can see, there's a lot of different perks that can drop. A lot of weapon perks have a pretty low percentage chance of dropping just because there are so many. So the pool for that type of perk is just huge. And then at the very bottom here, you have like the logging luck and stuff. So they've reduced that. So we have a much lower chance of that stuff dropping, only 0.03, but there is a chance. So when we scroll back up to the top, so before I said elemental aversion, so that has a 2.38% chance, so that we are going to put on the piece of armor. The shirking heals has to be on the piece of armor in order to actually be able to get that perk. And then at the top here, health has just about a 12% chance. Now it is tied with the critical retribution and refreshing, but it does have a very high chance of dropping. So if you want to guarantee the health, obviously you need to make sure you have the adamant and put that on there. But in this case, I would probably just craft 3+ different helms and see if we can get a health to drop, because your chances are much higher for that to drop as opposed to the elemental aversion if we're comparing to the one that we're looking at in game there. So definitely something to think about, and you can apply this to every single, armor or any of the weapons, anything like that. Make sure you look in the database and see what percentage chances are for those particular perks to drop on whatever you're crafting. Now, looking back in the game here, you're also going to notice that some of these are going to have the weapon perks on them. Now, some weapon perks are going to be very, very popular. If you go maybe over to, let's use spears for example there, since we were looking at that. If you look at the spears here, you're going to notice that penetrating backstab is one that is very, very common. Now, a couple of these are going to have penetrating backstab with maybe like Sundering Javelin or some of these other perks. And with something like that, the two perks that you have to craft onto it, like let's use this one for example, the two crafts that you would essentially want to make sure that you have on there is the Sundering Javelin and penetrating backstab. Both of those are just necessary if you need those two perks to be on there, you absolutely want to make sure those are on there. For one, the penetrating backstab, like we said earlier, you have to have that on in order for that PvP only perk to drop. And then Sundering Javelin, there are multiple different, weapon ability perks that can drop on your weapon. And if you want one specific one, I would definitely recommend going with whichever one you want. Now, then you have that chance of pulling Rogue or maybe like a Keenly Empowered or whatever, depending on what you're crafting. And so you do kind of leave that, open to chance as far as what you can pull. Now, let's say you don't need a specific weapon perk, but you wouldn't mind any of the weapon perks being on there. Then I would go with Penetrating Backstab and maybe Rogue and just see what you get. But again, I don't know the exact percentages for the spear right now. I'm not looking at it, but you're going to want to look on the database based on what you're trying to craft and see what those highest chances are. But essentially, that is what I'm looking for. You apply the same thing to jewelry, like I was saying. Same deal. You can go into rings, start looking and see what most people are buying. There's a lot of Invigorated Punishment with Hardy out here, I know. So that might be a ring for you on your server. You might want to go and check out. But the best way to know on your server is to just go to your trading post, switch everything to highest price so you can just see what the higher ticket priced items are and see what kind of consistencies there are, and make sure your filter is set to 700 right at the top there, so then you know that you are getting the absolute best crafts that you can get, and then from there you can go and craft the items yourself. Now, one other way you can actually go and try to save a little bit of money is crafting your own matrices. So let's actually first take a look here and see how much an armor matrix is, let's use weapon matrix. So weapon matrix, that's not right. 5,200 right now is the cheapest one. So from there, what we could do, if you don't want to spend the resources, you could go and see how much the Tempered Cast and an Ancient Handle is and see what kind of costs we're looking at. So 5,200 is the cheapest. The Tempered Cast, 2,700. We'll go back to here. Enchanted Handle is about 2,700. So in order to even craft it, you're going to want to make sure that you have those resources, because you should be able to. Most of the time when I'm crafting my matrices, I have a much easier time just crafting from the materials up, but every so often I will check and see if like the enchanted handles, if there's just like a crazy good deal, I might buy a couple, but it is worth checking it here and there just to see. But crafting your own matrices saves you a lot of money and essentially just makes your return on investment that much better when it comes to crafting. Crafting gear for gold can be a little intimidating for some people, especially when it comes to perk knowledge. I know it's not easy to learn all the perks and figure out what people are liking or what they aren't liking, or even just to keep up with the current metas. I know I oftentimes don't keep up with the meta the best, but with this method of, looking at the trading posts, figuring out, what is or isn't selling, you kind of get into this just kind of routine of checking it, knowing what's good or not, and then from there you can decide, is it worth it for you to invest in some crafting and then make that money. So with season 5 coming up, definitely is something to think about on top of all the various farming routes that I've been putting up, and I will put those farming routes in the description down below if you want to take a look. But that is going to do it for today's video, so until next time, I'll see you guys later.